lot about biology. I'm actually going to talk about a second passion of mine, which is social entrepreneurship. And I sort of discovered this throughout my journey from the last years of high school up to the end of university. So Uli had said he thought about why he would be here. I am here to convince you all to start social enterprises. So let's see how good a job I do. But before I delve into that, I'm going to tell you a small story. So I had a really, really close friend, and she wanted a different experience for her sort of high school years. So she applied to go to a United World College, which is this international set of international colleges all around the world. You live and learn with people. There's really great academics, but there's also community service, and you engage in sports. So it's sort of a holistic educational experience. And their motto is actually to make education a force to unite people, countries, cultures for peace and a sustainable future. So that's a lot to expect from 17-year-olds, but this is what my friend wanted. So she went to the one in Swaziland. Does anyone know where Swaziland is? Yeah? All right, cool. That never happens. So yes, so Swaziland is in South Africa, and this is the college she went to. When she went there, she spent a year volunteering, teaching English school in a nearby village to underprivileged kids. She spent another year volunteering at a hospital, helping people with TB consultations, and also packaging HIV pills. And so she was really inspired, and she applied and got into a very great university. But she got there, and she felt this overwhelming sense of privilege. And she kind of thought to herself, you know, there's nothing really I did to deserve all of this. Like, there were kids that did so much more amazing things, but they just didn't have the resources. They didn't have a college counselor, and that's why I'm here instead of them. So she had two choices, right? She could sit and say, all right, I'm privileged, I'm gonna sit here and cry. Or she could do something about it. And she did. And that girl is actually me. And what I did was, with a group of friends, we started a social enterprise called College Admissions Mentors for Africa. And this organization is a mentorship project that matches university students with African high school students who otherwise would not get the chance to learn about how you apply for colleges, because it's actually really, really complicated. No, they make it seem complicated, but once you have the resources and the information, it can be okay. And so when I was going through this process, I faced various challenges, but one thing I learned is that you don't have to wait that long to do something you want to do for your community. And so I wanted to give this presentation to share resources and steps that I and my team used to make this a reality. So, valid question, where do I start? So I'm a big fan of flowcharts. I'm a big organizer, so I created this flowchart. I tried to come up with a cool acronym like PIPPER or something like that, but I failed, so you have to deal with this. So it's 5 things: passion, idea, people, plan, reflection. So passion. I've heard so many people's passions already, but I just want to give another opportunity. Can people shout out their passions quickly?
Gaming.
Cool, yeah. Anything else?
Women empowerment.
Sorry? Women empowerment, great.
Food.
Food, always. Anything else? Writing. Yeah, so we all have passions, and I think we've had a little bit of a discussion of what passion entails. And this is a quote that I wrote in my pajamas. Go beyond knowing your passion, become its embodiment. And I think that's why I say that is because as a social entrepreneur, you come across different challenges. And I've just listed 3. Getting off the ground. you have to convince people to invest in your passion. And they'll only do that if they can see you're passionate enough. So you could go to someone and you can tell them, I really like this thing. But they're like, okay, but I can't really give you $3,000 for that. But if you go to them and say, listen to me, I am not leaving your doorstep until you listen to my idea. And so that helps you get off the ground. It helps you to convince people who you will ultimately work with that you are sufficiently passionate and that's why they should join you. Or that you share the same passions and that's why they should join you. 2 is managing commitments. Social enterprises in this stage of your life can be very challenging because you're also managing other things. Like I said, my major is actually biology. I also dabble in some volleyball, and I am sure it's the same among many, many people. You also have social relationships to navigate sometimes. So managing commitments is important, but if it's your passion, you're willing to prioritize it. And that's one of the key things about making a social enterprise successful, is just perseverance within that. Then the last thing is skills and expertise. I had zero business sense when me and my team started Kama, but I sought them. I looked at, okay, what do I need to, learn how to budget better? How do I learn how to fundraise? Do I need to do courses? Who do I need to speak to? And that thinking only comes if you're sufficiently invested. So passion, definitely number 1. Then ideas and people. I conflated these 2 things because I think they go together. People feed off of each other's ideas and it grows into something much more powerful than you could ever come up with your own. And I put this African proverb up there: if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's been a testament to my own journey. These are my people. So let me tell you something about people when it comes to social enterprises. Look for people who do something you can't do. So in the top corner, there's Daniel, who is in a dark blue shirt. Daniel is the director of public and media relations of Kama. Daniel can design newsletters better than I can. He's much better at social media, much more than I am. And that is why I said, Daniel, you need to be part of our team. The person next to him is Juria. Juria is the Director of Program Management and Mentor Engagement at Kama. Juria has databases that manages the relationships between our mentors and mentees that I cannot even begin to understand. She also follows up on every complaint and every praise that our mentors or mentees give back to us. Juria is amazing. That's why Juria is on our team. At the very bottom there, next to me in a sort of cast there, is Allison. Allison is the Director of Curriculum Development for Kama. Allison has done all the research on US colleges about what people need to gain entrance, about what skills admissions committees are looking for. And Allison does that better than I ever could, and that is why Allison is on our team. So find people who do what you cannot do. So now you're like, okay, Vongai, you've told me about passions, ideas, people, okay. But what about the actual thing I need to do to get things going? And that's the plan part of the schematic. So I think one thing is defining the goals of the venture. You can have a lovely idea, but without concrete goals, it's really hard to achieve. Has everyone ever heard of the SMART framework for goals? What does it stand for? You can help her out.
Okay, so I know so M stands for measurable.
Yes.
A stands for attainable.
Yes.
R stands for responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
T stands for time constraint.
Time bound? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, time bound. S I forgot.
Anyone can help her out? S?
Specific. Anyone?
Yes, specific.
Yeah.
Perfect, yes.
Yeah.
So if you don't know it, it's just an acronym that's really useful. I mean, you can probably think of it intuitively when you set goals, but I like that framework because it really forces you to be disciplined when you're setting goals. And then the second part is the activities to achieve the goals. So for us, it was like, okay, we want to get 25 of our mentees that we recruited to apply to a college and gain acceptance. What are those activities that we need? Well, one, we maybe need training workshops to teach them how to write a personal statement. So we'll do a workshop writing seminar or something like that. So those are the activities themselves. And now this point is very crucial, your unique selling point. So it's really hard to come up with, it's easy to come up with ideas. It's hard to come up with novel ideas. And novel ideas are important because it means you're advancing what people have already done as opposed to perhaps copying copying something that's already been done. And therefore, it's really hard for others to invest in your idea because they'll ask you, so what is different about your mentorship program? So you need to know what is different about it. The next part is timeline. So putting things down on paper. If you want to achieve something, it's useful to have a goal date. Even if you don't reach it, it helps you recheck later. So it's like, okay, May 2020 is my goal. I didn't really reach it. I like kind of lagged by a month, but what can I do to make sure I'm on time later? Then it's the human resources. So I talked about people earlier. So knowing what needs to be done, what you can do, and what you can't do so that you can find the people who will partner up with you. Then you have financial resources. Sometimes things cost money. I'm fortunate that Kama, it's sort of a low operating cost, but we still did need money. At the beginning, we put up our own personal finances for it because of passion. But later that becomes unsustainable, so you need a funding source. The next part is evaluation metrics, which is perhaps the most important, is that how do I know I've gotten there or that I've done enough? And that's very, very personal for each project or each social enterprise, but it's critical that you can do that check for yourself. And then last thing is sustainable. You don't want to start something that's going to crash after 6 months. And it can crash for other reasons, but you should have at least tried to put in things in place so that it doesn't. And that's really thinking critically about who will carry on. Right now, I'm about to graduate from NYU Abu Dhabi, and something I'm thinking about is who's going to fill in the role I currently play in my physical position. And that's 5 months in advance before I leave. So just keeping all of these factors in mind, especially at a mobile stage in your trajectory. The last thing is reflection. So after every mentorship cycle, Kama has had 3 so far, my team and I sit down and we ask ourselves these 3 questions. What have we done well? We need to celebrate, right? Like, these are people that are putting in hours, voluntary. We don't have funding to pay them, and they've done a really great job. So we need to celebrate that, and also celebrate the successes of our mentors who make this program a possibility. But then we don't dwell on that. We ask ourselves, what can we do better? Because we're not flawless, we're imperfect, and that's okay. And it gives us motivation to continue to improve that earlier. The first mentorship cycle, we recruited, let's say, 35 students to be mentees. We got 10 to actually submit application, not even gain acceptance, 10 to submit an application, which is a problem, right? No one wants to hear that kind of success rate. But later we're like, okay, what did we do wrong? We need to rethink this, we need to restructure, and the next year we did much better. Everybody submitted an application successfully. And so that's the kind of, you can dwell on the sort of failure, but failure is a natural process of having a social enterprise. And it's what makes it fun and challenging and worth the time. Then the last question is, how do we get there? How do we do those things better? So I just want to give an example about one of the outcomes we had for our reflections. So one of the things we realized we needed to improve is to engage with people on the ground. So one of Kama's programs is completely online, and that's how we started. It was a completely online mentorship program. And then we were like, but wait, why can't we just, go and see them? We have, on our team, we have people from Rwanda, we have people, I'm from Zimbabwe myself, We had people from South Africa. It's like, let's organize a college readiness workshop in one of these countries. We can do it. We have the network. And so this last summer, in July 2019, we hosted our first on-the-ground workshop in Rwanda. And there were 20 students who received intensive all-day training on not applying to US colleges, but just generally learning how to be self-aware, learning how to assess their interests. And it was beautiful, but we would never have come up with it if we hadn't gone through that series of reflection. And so I want to leave you guys with these resources, because my goal was to get you guys to start just social enterprise, and I think it'd be difficult if I didn't give you the resources. And so some of this is advisors, mentors, and professors. We're very privileged as Kama to have our own advisors and mentors who support our work all the time. There are startup incubators at our university. There's something called Start AD, where I have a friend who's working on a project to bring information sharing, like educational resources to students in his country as well. And so that could be another platform where social enterprises could be started. There are also social impact conferences for different stages. So I personally went to the Clinton Global Initiative Conference, which brings together youth social leaders from all over the world to discuss issues, to bounce off ideas. All of them had different stages of their projects, but I benefited tremendously from talking to everyone I met there. One Young World Conference is a similar idea, also very popular, and there are usually scholarships to attend these, so if it is that you need an extra funding, like it is still possible to go to these places. If there's anyone in high school, there's the Conrad Challenge, which is similar idea, but for people 13 to 18. And then online resources, plus Acumen has the coolest social entrepreneurship courses online, and then Youth Solutions Hub is a way to connect with other social innovators on online platforms. So yeah, so just as a check, how many people did I convince to start a social enterprise today? Cool. Thank you for listening to me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any quick question that's sneak in? Three questions. Can you get the mic?
Sorry, I hope that wasn't too underwhelming for the question. But for social entrepreneur, is that
Entrepreneurship, yeah.
Entrepreneurship that's like region based. When you approach a certain region, do you try to keep it as vague as possible, or like what part of the process do you have to start being specific about?
That's an interesting question. So our enterprise started more broadly, just because when we initially started, we wanted to cast the net wide and see what would happen as a kind of pilot program. But what I've actually found in my experience that it's much more powerful if you do start locally. One, because your connections will be stronger, and one, because you build relationships in that particular place and you can always expand outwards. And so even though our model is completely different and it has its reasons for being so, and other enterprises might have a different reason for being so, I think with social entrepreneurship, you also want to be responsible to the communities you're helping. And I think that is facilitated by fostering those local connections.
When was your happiest moment or proudest moment?
When one of our mentees from our first cycle, so he unfortunately didn't get accepted the first cycle, but he decided to try again and apply. And he actually messaged me and he said, "Vongai, I have great news for you. I'm going in January to my favorite colleges, and I'm so happy because you helped to do that. You and your team made that possible. And it wasn't, I thought I would be happy. I'm like, okay, Kama's doing what I'm supposed to do, but it was just because he had developed so much confidence over the past 6 months. And it was amazing to see that confidence, launch him into a future that he's always imagined for himself. So I really think it's when mentees do what they could have done anyway, but they choose to partner with us to do that. It's very fulfilling.